Hey guys, today I have a video about one of my favorite medium telephoto lenses for the Sony FX30, which is the Tamron 35-150mm f2 to 2.8 variable aperture lens. Soon I'll be releasing another video about my favorite zoom lens on the wider side, which is the Sigma 18-50mm f2 lens. So make sure that you like and subscribe and turn those notifications on so that you don't miss it. So this morning I went out and filmed a sequence with this lens so that you can see the quality that it produces on the FX30. So let's take a look at that before we jump right in. So what do you guys think? Let me know what you think about the quality in the comment section below. Now, as you may already know, this Tamron 35-150mm is a full frame lens. But Sony is innovative and have made all their newer cameras with the same lens mount. This E-mount provides the ability to use their lenses interchangeably on their full frame and APS-C sensor cameras. Because the Sony FX30 has an APS-C sensor, it crops in 1.5 times when compared to full frame cameras. This means that the Tamron 35-150mm turns into a 52.5 to 225mm lens. This range is quite incredible and outperforms the ever so popular 70 to 200mm full frame lenses in regards to reach. It's wider on the wide end and longer on the long end, making it more versatile. Now, the most impressive thing about this lens is that it starts at f2 at 52.5mm. As you zoom in, it changes to f2.8 at 123mm. At the time of recording this video, this lens costs $1,900 US, which is a bit more expensive than the FX3 itself, which is $1,800 US. I know it may sound like a lot of money, but if you buy the FX30 and this Tamron lens, it's still cheaper than buying an FX3 on its own. At this exact moment, the FX3 costs $3,900. Of course, the FX3 is a bit better in some circumstances, and that is why it costs so much more, but I could argue that the FX30 is almost just as good in a lot of ways. I'll be making a video about this soon, giving my advice on which camera I think is a better buy. Now, I have made a full in-depth video about this lens. It'll provide you a lot more details, so I'll inlay that video now. How's it going, guys? Today I have the highly sought after brand new lens from Tamron, the 35-150mm f2 to 2.8 variable aperture cinematic beast of a lens. I'm so stoked to be reviewing this lens. That's an understatement. Honestly, I've been wanting to try this lens for so long. But before we go any further, check out these cinematic test shots filmed with this lens. Wow, this lens, honestly, what can I say? I think this may be the best zoom lens that I've ever tried. I know that's a lofty claim to make, but who has created a lens like this? At 35mm you get f2, and then it ends at 150mm with f2.8? That's unheard of, no one's done this. Like, it's insane. I'm so stoked, the quality is just absolutely beautiful, so nice. Now in this video I'm gonna break down everything that you need to know, but before we continue, hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm gonna be making a bunch more videos specifically about this lens, so I'm gonna need you guys to follow along. I think Tamron did a really good job at appeasing cinematographers from all different industries, from weddings, events, branding, travel, lifestyle, commercial, this lens is designed to be an all-around hitter. So I'm really excited to break down its features. Oh, and if I haven't mentioned it yet, my name is Jonah August. I'm one half of The August. My wife Rebecca is the other half. We own a wedding photography and videography business in British Columbia, Canada. We absolutely love what we do, so if you want to follow our wedding work, make sure you check us out on Instagram at The August. And if you want to see any of our lifestyle and gear related content, follow my personal Instagram at Jonah Raven August. Okay, so I'm about to jump into this review, but before I do, I just need to give you a quick disclaimer. I was given this lens from Amplis to review. They are Canada's leading photographic supplier and Tamron Canada's distributor, but nor them or Tamron will be seeing this review before you. So I'm going to give my complete, honest opinion about this lens. And to be honest, this might be my new favorite lens. If you couldn't tell already, I'm pretty stoked about it. So let's jump right in. Talking about the build, Tamron has really upped their game. This lens is well constructed and feels just as good as any premium Sony lens. The zoom and focus ring have a good balance of resistance and easeability. I really don't like when lens rings turn too easily. Sigma does a really good job at keeping some great resistance throughout their lens lineup, but some Sony lenses are just way too easy to turn. The 24-105, it feels just odd turning it so easily. Took a while to get used to. I mean, it does have its perks if you want to change your focus really quick, but I like to have that little bit of resistance because it just feels more controlled. This Tamron lens has the perfect balance of both, and the zoom ring is sturdy enough that the focal length won't change apart from your will. Tamron added this lock button at 35mm, which is really great for transporting the lens. It's also especially important if you're going to put a matte box on this lens and want to keep the lens fixed at 35mm. Like most good lenses, there's an autofocus and manual focus switch. As you can see by looking at this lens, it has a bunch of custom features. It has a 3-way custom switch and 3 custom buttons. This little USB-C port connects to Tamron's lens utility so that you can customize these buttons and switches to exactly how you want them to be. Now, to properly explain this feature, I'd have to make a whole nother video talking about Tamron's lens utility. So if you want me to make that video, let me know in the comment section below. This lens hood conveniently locks into place. One of my favorite features about this lens is its weather sealing. Tamron didn't hold back with this lens's weather sealing. It has 11-point sealing, and the USB-C port is also weather sealed. As a cinematographer on the west coast of Canada, it rains here a lot, and I hate using those plastic rain covers. So having gear that is waterproof or water resistant really makes a world of a difference. So the fact that this lens does good in wet and damp conditions is a huge win for me. If for some reason you're worried about getting water into the USB-C port, you can buy those little USB-C caps for extra peace of mind, but honestly, I don't think you really need them. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. You may already know this just by looking at the lens, or if you've watched other reviews, that it's quite heavy and it is a pretty big lens. The length of this lens is 6.2 inches and its weight is just over 2.5 pounds. Now I know some of you are going to be worried about the weight of this lens. It's going to be too heavy for you, but if you're a shooter that likes to rig up your camera, having that weight actually will help keep your footage more stable. But you have to look at it like this. Think about the versatility you get with this lens. 35-150mm starting at f2, ending at f2.8. Sure, it's heavy, sure, it's big, but all the stuff that you can capture with just one lens makes up for that weight and size. So the filter thread size on this lens is 82mm. This is actually my favorite filter thread size. I always suggest getting an 82mm or even one that's bigger. I made the mistake before when I first started filmmaking. I got a filter that fit the lens I had at the time, and the filter thread size was 72mm. Now when I started upgrading my kit and getting bigger lenses, that variable ND filter no longer fit it. So now I had to buy some new ones. So it's always a good idea, get the bigger size to start, and then you can use step up, step down rings or whatever just to connect it to your other lenses. Okay, let's move on to the image quality and video capabilities. Starting with autofocus, let's see how good this lens does. The settings I'm using in camera are continuous autofocus with eye tracking turned on, transition speed at 7, which is fast, and subject shift sensitivity is at 5, which is responsive. I made these settings extremely snappy intentionally just for review purposes. Usually people don't film this way, but this will give us a good gauge at how quick this lens does in autofocus. Let's take a look at all the major focal lengths. Let's start at 35. 150. $85. $100. $135. And $150. Like I mentioned before, this is a variable aperture lens. So as you're zooming in, the shallowest depth of field you can get changes depending on the focal length. Let's take a look at when the aperture changes at which focal length and how they compare to one another. Now, even if this lens was constant at f2.8, it would be an amazing lens. But the fact that you can get f2 on the wider end is quite amazing. Okay, let's talk about bokeh. Having this shallow depth of field creates a beautiful bokeh at all focal lengths. I think it's really important to have a lens that can shoot as shallow as possible. Yes, you can go even shallower with prime lenses, but then you're not getting this type of focal range. I know that some of you may be thinking that f2 isn't enough. I personally think it's quite great. I generally film at f2.8 throughout a wedding day. I really don't think you'll be missing out on much with this lens. Especially if you mix f2.8 at 100mm, you're gonna get a mix of nice creamy bokeh with compression in the background, and it'll create a really nice dreamy look. Moving on to sharpness, the Tamron 35-150mm lens is great from 35 to 150. It stays quite sharp between the whole focal range. Now, it's not so sharp that it's unpleasant to look at. Some images are too sharp and they look unnatural to the eye. The Tamron is a perfect balance of being sharp yet still film-like looking. Now, before I got this lens, I heard that it was Parfocal, and that really intrigued me considering that most Parfocal lenses cost quite a bit of money. Some lenses require you to refocus after you change the focal length, but with this lens, you almost don't have to refocus at all. Now, let's talk about stabilization. This lens doesn't have optical stabilization. Would it be better if it did? Most definitely. I was concerned about this because I'm so used to using my 24-105mm lens that has OSS built in, but this one doesn't have it at all. But after doing some tests with the A7 III's 5-axis image stabilization with active stab turned on, the footage looked quite stable. I actually think having a little bit of movement and shakiness makes the shot look more natural in some circumstances, but if you need to stabilize your footage, you can always do that in post. Let's talk about lens flares. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think they're really cool for some specific shots, but I can understand why they can get quite overwhelming. One of my favorite things about cinematography is that you can evoke so many different types of emotions from your audience, and I think that having sun flares can do that exact thing, make your audience feel like you're in a dream-like state. Yes, most definitely some sun flares look disgusting. They can have weird tints, weird colors, and just look like garbage overall, but when it's done right, it can be really pleasant to the eye, and I think this Tamron 35-150mm does it right. Manual focus with this lens is a breeze. If you use focus peaking with your camera, you'll have no trouble pulling and racking focus with this lens. What about focus breathing? Well, here's the great thing about this lens. Take a look at these shots and you'll see that there is only minimal focus breathing going on. Alright guys, that is my review of the Tamron 35-150mm f2 to 2.8 variable aperture lens. I hope that was all the information that you wanted to know and that it was helpful. In my opinion, this lens is perfect for all types of videographers in all different industries. For me, generally being a wedding videographer, this lens is perfect for me. Unfortunately, I do have to return this lens because I just have it for review purposes, but I'm going to put my order in right away. Why I think this lens is perfect for wedding videographers is because we don't have the time to keep swapping out lenses all day. Weddings are usually fast paced, and if you have the ability to just keep one lens on the whole time, that's absolutely perfect. And we love to get those bokeh-licious shots, so having f2 to 2.8 is perfect for that. And being able to let more light in at f2 is really great for those low light situations. Let me know if you can relate. If you work primarily in in other industries, I want you to let me know if you think this lens is perfect for your type of work. All right guys, so what do you think about this lens? I'm still really stoked on it. I think it's a perfect match for the Sony FX30. Given that range, you can't really find anything else like it on the market. Please let me know if you have any questions about this lens and I'll make sure to answer in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.